The Apex Bank of Nigeria, the central bank, in a bid to boost economic and financial inclusion strategy, has initiated efforts to have over 28 million Nigerians without access to financial products and services.
Well, part of the initiative is driving women's financial inclusion by leveraging agent networks as it sets out 8 strategic imperatives to systematically reduce and close the gender gap in economic and financial inclusion.
Meanwhile, the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, NFIS, is a policy that aims to reduce the percentage of unbanked individuals and promote inclusion. The objective of NFIS is to increase access to financial services and make financial services affordable to many Nigerians.
Well, the CBN monetary policy rate, savings deposit rate, and loan-to-deposit ratio of banks excluded many, and it is on this note that new initiatives are to be adopted to accommodate many Nigerians to access financial services.
That's true, Victor. And there are factors affecting economic and financial inclusion, which include low financial literacy, inadequate infrastructure, inefficient technology-based facilities by financial institutions. These factors, no doubt, has limited significant expansion in economic and financial inclusion. It is on this note that initiatives to increase economic and financial inclusion arises.
Well, Ademola, the initiative to economic and financial inclusion implies to maximize the vision to access some financial platforms like funds in savings accounts, remittances, and pension funds. Today on Good Morning Nigeria, we will examine economic and financial inclusion with a focus on the initiatives. I am Victor, as a welcome to the program, of course, the first for the week.
That's true. And I'm Demola Adeoye. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are reaching you live on the network service of the NTA show.
All right, it's time for newspaper review in a moment.
Our newspaper reviewer, Chukwudi Okoli-Ugbaja, is here. Chooks, good morning to you.
Morning, Demola. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
I wouldn't say that I'm really sad because it is not quite time for the rainy season. But my hopes were raised when I saw signs of, the heavens giving us that delicious, that wonderful liquid rain.
When?
You didn't get your sight at all?
No, it didn't rain here.
It drizzled where I live.
Ooh.
Yes. I hear it got a little heavier.
I wish it did.
Yes. But then that's why the heat is also building up, because the rains are gathering up there in the clouds. Okay. Meteorologist Chukwudi Okoli-Ugbaja. Good morning, gentlemen.
Welcome. Well, let's begin with the review, and I have the blueprint here with me, and it lists with this story. Tension in Osun as defiant Adeleke swears in LG chairs councillors, tells them to stay off secretariats. Release allocations to only reinstated chairman. APC urges FG. Beware of wild, wild west, Makinde warns. Okay, and above that story, you have, in business, we have over 600 billion naira worth of fuel in stock. That's according to Dangote, and that story is on page 22. And in sports, 2025 Afro-Basket Championships, D Tigers secure tickets in Libya. That one is on page 32. And to other stories, just to the right of the picture story here, Ayedatiwa dumps Akeredolu's redeemed agenda, opts for our ease in capital letter. Okay? And at the bottom of the front page of the blueprint, Nigeria saves $20 million daily from fuel subsidy removal. That's credited to Yedele, says current tax system not conducive. FG, China signed 7.6 billion euros clean energy deal. All right, let's leave the blueprint for now and head to the leadership. It leads with this story. 80 persons die of Lassa fever in 11 states. That's on page 4. Corruption in judiciary. Lawyers blame Nigerian system. Seek urgent reforms. And it has 3 riders. Ask CJN, NJC to be intentional about change. Okay. Bias, corruption allegations eroding public trust in judiciary. That's credited to an SAN. And highest ethical standards important. That's according to the NBA president. And above the nameplate, FG suspends $8 billion to stabilize Naira, page 21. Beside that, we are ready for 2025 Hajj operations. That's according to NACON, and it's on page 6. And to the right-hand strip, the boxes on the right, 7 dead, 6 injured in Edo communal clash, page 7. Telecom blackout looms as fuel tanker drivers down tools, page 22. And Serap asks court to halt ATM fee increase. That one is on page 6. I think I'll leave it here. Ademola.
Okay, thank you, Victor. I have the Daily Trust newspaper with me. And just below the nameplate, Minister threatens to leave APC over Kano chairmanship. Details of that story can be found on page 12. We have over 600 billion worth of petrol in store. Dangote, details of that story can be found on page 24. Nigeria records 80 deaths from Lassa fever in 1 week. Details of that story can be found on page 7. And the major headline reads, how federal government spent $8 billion to support Naira Rewani. Nigerians yet to feel impact of rebasing inflation. It is not true. Presidency, CBN mom. Details of the story can be found on page 4. Why we toppled Buhari, IBB. Details of that story, it's on page 3. How cleric hypnotized killed students in Kwara. Details of the story can be found on page 21. North needs to align with South-South to rescue Nigeria, El Rufai. Details on page 12. After inauguration, Adeleke asked LG chairs to stay away from officers. Details on page 5. And there is this interesting African proverb. It said, a frown on the face of the goat will not stop it from being taken to the market. Chooks.
How do they know when a goat frowns? Well, that's a very good one.
I'm telling you.
Africa has very rich.
Very rich.
It's a cornucopia, so to speak, abundant, container there. I'm interested in this minister who is threatening to leave APC over Kanu chairmanship. He must be a spectacular human being. Isn't APC where they're all trooping to now? That's where it's happening. Nigerian politics,
this is politics.
It's politics. Okay, let's see whether he'll carry out the threat. He has only threatened. Now, Lassa fever is gradually becoming a problem. 80, you said that?
80.
You know the problem with Lassa fever? It has no vaccine. There is no real cure. You can only be given some supportive medications which will help you a bit, but it's not really a cure. That's why we should be very careful, what we allow Lassa fever to do in our communities. The most important step to take is the preventative step. So let's up our game there. It's very important. $20 million being saved daily from subsidy removal. I know that subsidy removal was necessary from a personal point of view, that is. Nigerians are beginning to understand it. I am telling people that when BUA commissions the refinery, where is it going up? Is it Cross River or Akwa Ibom? One of them. when they commission their refinery, is nowhere near the $20 billion Dangote affair.
Of course.
But when they do add their own production, you're going to see that eventually we might hit 650 by 2026. I hope we do that.
650 what?
650 naira to buy a liter of fuel.
Oh, you mean it will drop?
Yes. I said it will drop. I'm not Bismarck Rewani. I'm not any of them. But I said after the subsidy removal and the competition, comes in, is going to drop fuel to about 980. It's even going for 965 now. Even those who are not NNPCL are selling at 965. So let's believe that some economic models work in Nigeria. Some of us think that this country is mission impossible. I don't think so.
Actually, it's as a result of supply and demand.
That's what it is ultimately. Even in Nigeria, supply and demand would work. Do you still eat yams? I've gone to potato. Let yam sellers keep there.
I like the cup that you drink from, the cup that you look at, which always
half-full.
Shows you that
I'm a natural optimist.
I like it. I like it.
There's no bots coming from you this morning.
No, nothing more.
What is happening between Adeleke and Oyetola camps and all that? Let them be careful. Let them be careful. Oshu should not let things boil over. Yeah, I think there's litigation somewhere, so we better be careful how much we talk about it. But I think we have to show that in 2025, politics cannot be what it was in 1960, in 1965, in the 1970s. No, we have to show the world that we're moving, Of course, there will always be disagreements between politicians and all that. But when you now begin to hear editors or see editors use the word defiant Adeleke, we ask people not to qualify, so you don't extend news writing to controversy, into controversy. So, but when you hear defiant Adeleke, it shows you that things are not exactly going the way they should go.
Well, there was a council election. I think, that should bring some level of calm. At the end of the day, it's a democratic thing, and if that happens and it was peaceful, we should sustain the calm.
It was like a one-party election, because the APC did not take part in the election.
Exactly.
And you have these conflicting courts,
injunctions.
Injunctions.
That's the point.
The Federal High Court is saying something, the other High Court is saying something. So there's so much.
The judiciary in Nigeria
that is where the problem
needs to harmonize a few things. I think so. Even though there are federal courts, there are state courts and all that.
So that's
justice is still justice. It's the common denominator, for them. So we must see something that looks like normal or feels like normal. I know we're not their learned friends, but we also know that there's something called normality. Bismarck Rewani is saying that about $8 billion was pumped in by the federal government to stabilize the naira.
Nigerians are yet to feel the impact of the rebasing inflation. We had that discussion on Wednesday.
Okay, you must have given us.
They gave a very good explanation about this rebasing of inflation. Remember? Yeah. And the guy, what he said was that the inflation trend that they talked about is just looking at it from 2024 to 2025. They are not looking at it from the 2009 to 2005.
Victor didn't quite agree with me the other time, but I keep saying that a mudu of beans, the iron beans I buy, was 2,200 about 3 weeks ago. It's 1/6. It's 1/6. It was 1/6 3 days ago. So we have to say these things the way they are.
They are trying to put it in context, actually, that what obtains in 2009, the naira value is different from what obtains now. So you can't be judging.
Oh, you can't pair them up that way. I get the.
It's just a tool for measurement. When we talk rebase, it's just a tool for measurement.
Okay.
It's just a tool for measurement, using what is current to measure. That's it. And we're talking inflation.
From scientist Victor. Where is your beaker? In the biology class, at least I knew the beaker.
I didn't do biology.
You didn't do biology. Yeah, gentlemen, so we have 600 billion liters of fuel in stock. That's coming from Dangote. Does it reassure us? It should. I think so. The European Union is actually saying that they are feeling the impact of Dangote refinery. So that's good branding for Nigeria. It's selling abroad. So there is something good coming from the green, white, green. You know, some of us love this country so much. We almost forgot our names, you know. We practically made it Nigeria.
Well, and this Lassa fever story won't go away. 80 persons die of Lassa fever in 11 states.
Yes, and I started by saying that the sad aspect of it is that Lassa fever is not, it does not have a cure. Lassa fever does not have a vaccine. And what you can do is to give supportive medication that can improve, you know, gradually return the person to, you fight actually. At the end of the day, it's not the medicine, just supportive. So if this is the case, it means that we have to do all we can to ensure that the incidence of it does not happen at all. It's very important.
Yeah, to prevent, and that will mean a lot of creating a lot of awareness. So that people take precautionary measures to forestall it.
I'm not in medicine, but I have this feeling that many of the ailments we suffer here would not have happened if some actions were taken. The other time I was talking about sugar. Why do you have cases of dialysis in the villages, you know, coming up?
Diabetes.
Diabetes, yes. Yeah, diabetes, dialysis, I mean, the end stage cure for renal problems. It is because villagers go to the hospital when they have sugar problem. They treat it, they take it down. Because the person seems to have recovered, they don't do their follow-up because you're supposed to take your, is it metformin?
Medication.
You need to take them on and on till the rest of your life, just like the hypertension drugs. But once they come back and they break it till the next crisis takes them.
But not just that. Yes. You can't just live on medication. You also have to watch what you eat. You begin to watch what you eat. Dieting, in fact, plays a bigger role. You talk about exercise. All of these work together. For me, medication should just be complementary, but you have to take the necessary steps to ensure it doesn't go up.
So in other words, what he's saying is that you are what you eat.
Exactly. Nature is the first medicine. That's what Victor is saying, you know. But even then, here in Nigeria, I once asked my wife, Charity, why didn't you join the parents when they were doing this, their sprint at the inter-house sports? You know what she asked me? Onyechukum, who is chasing me? Africa should take exercise, you know, seriously. When they see you jogging on Maitaba sidewalk, these people don't get walk. We have to change a lot of things. Exercise is everything.
I think it has to come with a lot of awareness.
Exactly.
You know, we have to drum it in and tell people the importance.
Just keep talking about it.
You know, the importance of it. That's it. Anyway, well, Chooks, we have to draw the curtain now.
Thank you so much for giving me time today.
All right, thank you.
We're making up.
We'll take a break now. Good Morning Nigeria continues. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Just before we bring in our guest for our conversation on economic and financial inclusion with focus on the initiatives, let's take this excerpt from the last edition of the conversation, subject matter compiled by Timothy Yusuf.
We sit down, understand these problems, work with mandate agencies, work with public sector, so that when we come up with solutions, it's impactful, it can scale, it is sustainable. It does a lot of things. So what this government is trying to do is bring these two things together, you know, so that as we are addressing financial inclusion challenges, we're addressing economic empowerment challenges, we are looking at it from a sustainable perspective.
We're using one bullet really to fight multiple challenges and problems. So in bringing the two together, we're talking about how do we ensure that all Nigerians have economic access and are economically active. And then the second is how do we ensure that when they're economically active, they have access to quality, affordable financial products and services.
Because I've been back in Nigeria for 15 years and I've had data capture like 50 times. You data capture for phone, for your passport, data capture here, data capture there. We shouldn't need to do that. It's that multiplicity of collecting the same information is what people often find frustrating. So if we can have one way, which is the NIN, and everybody knows what NIN stands for and how they can get their NIN, then that will enable us to uniquely identify all individuals. Then they can begin to get access to loans, access to pension.
This administration is actually approaching this economic and financial inclusion differently in order to ensure that the promise, of renewed hope agenda is actually achieved.
All right, that excerpt sets the tone for the conversation this morning, and seated here in the studio, let me introduce Kashifu Inu Abdullahi, who is the Director General of NITDA. A pleasure to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Victor, for having me.
Also, we have in the studio Dr. Nuruddin Abubakar Zauro, the technical advisor to the President on Economic and Financial Inclusion, also the Secretary and the head of the Presidential Committee on Economic and Financial Inclusion. Dr. Abubakar Zauro, you are welcome once again.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Mr. Adera.
All right, let's begin this conversation. Let me ask Kashifu Inu Abdullahi, since you are chairman of the technical committee of PRECEFI, as well as being a director general of NITDA, what does your role at the PRECEFI entail, really?
So, as a technical committee, when you talk about financial and economic inclusion today, as we live in a digital era, you cannot do away with technology. So NITDA was established as a regulatory and developmental agency to help Nigerians use technology, and our vision is to make Nigeria a digitally empowered nation, fostering inclusive economic growth through technological innovation. So our main objectives of been driving this implementation is to embed IT and digital technology into this inclusion we are talking about. Because with technology, government can deliver delightful solutions to citizens to what could be a stressful life event. For example, you have a new baby. Today, to register a passport, you have to move from one place to another, and so on. But with technology, seamlessly today, you can start your name registration online, walk in and get your data captured. You can start the passport registration as well online and get there to complete it. So this is what technology can do. And if you are doing this implementing national initiatives like this, you need to have standards, you need to have framework, and you need to have best practices to help you integrate everything seamlessly. And part of our mandate as an agency, we are the clearinghouse for all government investment in IT. We've designed the national enterprise architecture. We have the interoperability framework. And also, when you talk about digital public infrastructure, you need to build standard for it. Like under the initiative, we are looking at the payment system, digital ID, data exchange platform. So all this cannot be built in silos. We need to have a standard, we need to have a best practice, we need to have a framework which MDAs and private sector can make reference to while building their own infrastructure.
So with this, your intro, I mean, from what you have said now, this financial inclusion seems to be, limited to the people in the cities. What about the people in the rural areas that are not, aware of all these development? How do you reach out to them, especially the hard to reach areas where you talk about introducing technology, IT, and all that? In these areas, you have difficulty in those areas, and this is financial inclusion. You want to include people even in the rural community. So what plans do you have for them?
So when you talk of inclusion, means it's not limited to only cities. We want every Nigerian to be part of it, to be included. And we have so many initiatives implementing to make this reality. For example, the government is building the infrastructure to connect the unconnected. Recently, the president approved the SPV to deploy 95,000 kilometers of fiber optics across the country. We also have other initiatives like rural telephony. We have USPF, which has a fund to connect the rural communities. In addition to that, also we are working with the private sector to build our compute power. And also we have other initiatives like digital literacy, where we have the digital literacy framework, the National Digital Literacy Framework, with an ambitious target of increasing our digital literacy level to 95% by 2030. So it's not just about connecting people, but also empowering them with digital literacy so that you can achieve meaningful connection. Because just dropping access is not enough. People need to know, need to learn how to use the technology, and especially how to use it for economic activities. That's why it's not just financial inclusion, but financial and economic inclusion. When you have the connectivity, use it for your businesses. For example, there is a lady who participated in one of our digital literacy program about 3 years ago. She lives in Sileja. She sells kuli kuli.
Okay.
She used to produce her kuli kuli every day and bring it to Abuja. But after that digital literacy training, she learned that she can put her kuli kuli on Facebook, Instagram, and also send to her customers through WhatsApp. So they can send she can send her account details, they make payment, and she can send the kuli kuli to them. Before, she used to spend about 3 hours commuting between Sileja and Abuja every day. But after that digital literacy training, she used that 3 hours to produce more kuli kuli and extend her reach and make more profit. So you can see the power of technology. Even market women can use it. They can collect payment. They can reach out to their customers. So that's why the president mandated us to increase our digital literacy level, which we have started working. We are doing it in 3 buckets. We've worked with the Minister of Education. We've developed curricula for digital skills to embed it in our formal education from primary schools to tertiary institutions. We are also doing the workforce upskilling for workers. Then we have the one for the informal sector. In partnership with NYSC, we are doing pilot now in 12 states where we recruit NYSC core members as champions. We train them and we give them opportunity to be learning online, and they go outside to markets, motor park, to our senior citizens, religious centers, to train our citizens on basic digital literacy.
Okay.
How to use the devices, how to create content, how to communicate and collaborate with people, the safety, how to protect their data to avoid all these frauds online, and problem solving. So this will educate the rural community on how to use this access meaningfully.
All right. Thank you very much, Kashifu Inua. Let me get to Dr. Nuruddin Zauro. Now, how many initiatives are there, and how much thought has gone into this to ensure that you have all grounds covered?
Okay. Thank you so much, Victor, and good morning once again, Nigerians. Thank you so much. So, if you look at the structure of the presidential committee that was recently, set up by this administration, you see, we have basically about 3 layers. We have the governance committee headed by the vice president, and of course, what they call deputized by the Minister of Finance. We also have the technical committee, headed by DG Nida, who is here with us, today, and of course deputized by the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, DG FSS. So the issue here is that alignment between the fiscal and monetary policy, monetary sector of the country, I think is important, which has been correctly highlighted by DG when it comes to not only access, which is financial inclusion, but also economically empowered, right? As an enabler to support financial inclusion. So in terms of initiatives, DG spoke extensively about the leveraging technology, which we know that is the way we can be able to get to the last mile, who is the ultimate target, right? The people in the village and other vulnerable groups that we spoke about. And, for us to be able to achieve this journey sustainably, we have to have one of the important aspects in the financial system is actually to restore confidence. That is the public confidence. Because somebody in the village, who used to put his money under his pillow, for him to do his normal transaction tomorrow when he's going to the next market, just to open his pillow and pick up the money, you now want to convince that person to go and open an account, and they be keeping those money into the account, into the bank or financial systems and all of that. I think it takes a lot of effort for you to restore confidence in that particular. What are the parameters that you need to put in place as part of our initiatives? I think it's the restoration of the consumer protection related initiative. So we plan to come up with the consumer protection at the base, at the last mile, you understand. As you know, we just came on board, but in terms of the bouquets of initiatives that we intend to have, apart from leveraging technology, is to also collaborate with agencies involved so that we can be able to, first of all, enhance the literacy. DG spoke extensively about the literacy, including particularly emphasis on the digital literacy, but we have the broader financial literacy, which is also a very key. Central Bank issued the financial literacy framework, which was some years back launched. So all the stakeholders involved in this, to the extent of incorporating this into our schools curriculums, to ensure that people are now financially literate. They know how to manage their finances right from the personal finances to all sort of the banking service and all of that. I think those ones are key when they are when they are learned in that space. I think it adds a lot of value. And then again, for them to know that there is redress mechanisms whereby you have issues. For example, you have your ATM has issues. How can you now report, and then your issue can now be resolved promptly? All those ones are also in the pipeline. So among this particular one, in August last year, that is 2024. What we did was that we did what they call high level policy dialogue. We did it outside the country in order to visit certain places to learn how these things are done, at the global scale, so that we can be able to bring the learnings, to develop our own locally here. So currently, one of the initiatives we are partnering with the relevant agencies like law enforcement agencies, regulators, and of course technology providers, in order to come up with such a framework that we will enhance services within the banking system. How do we enhance services, for example, especially for the last mile person? When you have 1,000 naira, hooked in your ATM, for example, how can you, within no distant time, that issue can actually be resolved? And then again, most of these people at the agent locations, especially, some people leverage on that to carry out some sort of like a criminality, if I can call it that way. For example, cashing out something that is. So we have to ensure that we're actually working to ensure that they enhance what you call it KYC, because whoever is the agent that is transacting in the village, which you spoke about, his identity, his traceability is actually assured, so that whatever happened, you can be able to follow through and track and do the needful based on the extant laws and regulations on ground. So that one is also there. Again, in terms of communication, to be able to inform people, for them to understand what is the direction of government in this, we are also working towards collaborating with agencies, of course, such as the likes of NTA and your sister organization, which is the Ministry of Information. Ministry of Information, right? Okay, to collaborate with them, like Bureau of what's the name? This agency that has to do with advocacy and all of that. So, yeah, anyway, thank you so much. So we're actually coming up with those initiatives that are in a bouquet of activities so that every Nigerian, which I can call every economically active Nigerian, should not be left behind in this journey. So this is one of such. I don't want to go, because technology, DG has spoken extensively, about that aspect. There are other aspects also that we're also working on. For example, now, last week when we were discussing, we spoke about 5 key gaps, right? Number one of such is the gender. Right, so last month, precisely 30th January and 31st January, we convened a gender inclusion conference, in the State House there. One of the things is to address one of the key financial inclusion gap, which is what? Gender. We call it #She's Included. So the intention here is that there are so many initiatives going on, both the public and private sector in the country, right? Supporting women, women's economic empowerment, gender-based violence, and all that. So what we did here is that at the apex level of government, which is the presidency, we are now saying all those initiatives, how can we first of all promote this aspect whereby people both in the public and private sector are encouraged, for them to support gender, so to get them empowered, so that we can be able to have balancing, where as much as men does have access to financial services, women should equally have such access. Then again, to also come up and stand and benefit from these economic activities in the country, both the public and private sector. Another aspect of it also is the youth, right? So our youth, if you can remember, particularly from 18 to 35, I think these are the people, let me say, who have less access to financial services. And I'm sure the reasons are very clear, because maybe within that period, they're trying to, maybe some of them graduate from school, they're trying to get a job, some of them from secondary school, they're trying to do one or two things. So what we're trying to say within that, we realize that there is lesser access to financial services, and of course economic opportunities. So we're now saying at the apex level, we'll be promoting youth inclusion, to ensure that every Nigerian stand the same opportunity or equal opportunity to benefit from the economic opportunities of the country, as well as access to financial services. If you look at globally, all those other countries, you realize that we have so many. Because of initiatives that came up, a lot of youth, they are very smart, especially within the leveraging technology space. So what are the things that we can do in order to promote, to support our youth? In India, for example, they created an ecosystem whereby we have middle class. Within the middle class system, a lot of people, have affordability. They are smart enough to grab the opportunities within the technology space, so that they can transform it into some economic activities that will get a lot of people off the street and, of course, get jobs and all. So that one is also one of the focus within the pipeline of initiatives we also have. If you look at the rural-urban gap, it's also existing, whereby more people in the rural area does have less access to financial services compared to the people in the city. I think that also comes to the question you asked, DG, just some few minutes ago. So technology actually is the way to go around that. I think DG has spoken extensively. And of course, a typical example of such is that before the arrival of agent banking in Nigeria, that time, in 2015 precisely, a geospatial mapping was conducted, and at that time it was realized that about 239 local government out of the 774 at that time does not have a single, financial access point. So most of those places, of course, are in the rural areas, right? So the challenge, because of this challenge, with the arrival of agent banking, I doubt if there is any village that has some key economic activities that you will not find all these agent banks and all that, operating within that space. I know that there are challenges around connectivity, which NIDA and other related agencies are doing very fantastic job to ensure that they enhance that space. So we are making progress in different fronts just to be sure that those people in the villages are also given the needed access to financial services. And two more on the 5 scales that I spoke about. We have regional issues, and then the last one is MSMEs. MSMEs, I think that one is quite clear. Initiatives are going on. Different agencies are doing a lot, in order to support the MSME space, creating access to financial services, and of course, supporting them for us to have more jobs. But then again, regional issues, yeah.
You talked about, getting the unbanked, to bank. And I'm wondering, it's okay that you have the CBN represented in all that you do, among others. How do you walk around? Are the government policies also deliberate enough to ensure that you are not walking in one direction and policies are taking you in another direction? And I ask, if you are going to convince someone who was keeping his money safely under his pillow, whenever he needs it, he grabs it. Now, how are you going to convince him to come and start paying charges that never go down but keep going up?
I understand.
That's one. To convince him now that you have to pay charges just to do banking. The other pattern, the other system you are used to doesn't hurt you. And second, you also want to talk about, after paying the charges, you talk about availability. Sometimes when you need money, they say, okay, you can't get this amount, you can get X amount. These are policies, sometimes deliberate policies. So are you not working at cross purposes? How are you going to achieve your goals at that rate?
Thank you so much. The initial person that has been storing his money under his pillow, remember, it comes with its own costs, because that attracts some miscreants around, to come around, like insecurity-related issues, knowing fully well that he has money under his pillow. Am I right? So it comes with its own cost. Again, now, the policies that government is putting in place in order to restore the confidence that I spoke about, that encourage such person to be able to, I think it's, DG spoke about a lot of issues in service availability so that he can use at his comfort zone, he can transact. Am I right? But again, in terms of charges, my dear, you have to also realize that the people operating in this space, they also have to survive for them to provide such services. But again, that same person, initially, when he wants to deposit or withdraw money, he has to travel all the way, long distance, that kind of thing. But by bringing those services closer to his doorsteps, definitely it comes at a lesser cost compared with the amount he's. Also, the risk of putting the money under his pillow, where maybe overnight when the other people, God forbid, they come around, the whole story now totally changed. So what the government is doing here is that it's trying to strike a balance. While we encourage people to come into the space, to invest also their money, to bring such initiatives, they also have to pay bills. They also have to do pay some administrative charges. So I think it's all about striking a balance so that Nigeria can actually be a better place for investors, and of course the Nigerian citizens will also be happy for what the government is doing. So I think let me stop at that.
Okay, trying to strike a balance. And you have spoken about a lot of things, the financial inclusion goals, which is increase financial services to undeserved population, including women and youth, and promote financial literacy and education, support small and medium-sized enterprises. Let's go to the DG NIDA now. My question would be, what effort actually, because is government making to increase access to financial services such as, banking, insurance, and microfinances for the undeserved population? Because that is also very, very vital.
Thank you. Before I respond, let me add more clarity to the last question Victor asked Honorable TA about how to get people to use these services. I think also, in addition to what he said, we also need to enlighten them on the benefit it comes with. Because technology can help you scale up your market, reach to more customers, improve productivity, and generate more revenue. According to research, if SMEs infuse technology into their operation, they can increase their revenue with about 100 to 120%, as well as productivity. I gave an example with the woman selling kuli kuli. If she is to come to Abuja, she will take her time to go to 100 customers. But with WhatsApp, with just one click, she can reach out to 100 or 1,000 customers. And also, she used the time she spends commuting to produce more. So imagine any small or nano enterprise business using technology to extend their reach beyond their own immediate local community. You can reach out to any person, any potential customer to buy from you. So I think this is the kind of what the digital literacy will help us to achieve. When you enlighten them, when they understand the power of technology, how they can use technology to increase revenue and productivity, I believe they will all embrace using technology to achieve that.
What about those who are not literate enough to understand what technology stands for? Are you in any way, because he talked about collaborating with other government agencies, are you in any way collaborating with probably NGOs and probably local communities, to further, draw in this, information?
So we are creating an ecosystem, and also we see the digital literacy itself as something that you can use technology even without ability to read and write. For example, I know people who cannot read and write. They have mobile phones. They can open WhatsApp and send voice message. They can't save your number with your name, but they can use an icon or something to just identify this number belongs to so-so person. So this is part of the digital literacy we are talking about. And it has different proficiency level, because what we want is for every Nigerian to be included. How can we help them develop their digital fluency? So we work as an ecosystem with the private sector, with NGOs, development partners, to build and develop contents in local languages. That's why we use NYSC to go to market, to meet market women, to meet motor park workers, artisans, and religious organizations, to meet them there and try to enlighten them on how to use the technology. And we have it in 6 competency areas. How someone can use his devices to access information, like the banking and so on. And also with technology, it is easy today. You can have like a QR code to receive payment. Someone does not need to open his account to start transferring number. You can just have a QR code where you scan something and you can receive payment. This is something doable and is being in use in some part of the world. So we are trying to see how can we bring this kind of innovation into our rural communities. How can we encourage them to be included financially? How can we encourage them to be able to save in the banks, to be able to access credit, to be part of insurance, and even, for example, our senior citizens that retire, how can they collect their pension through all these digital means? So the digital literacy will help in that, while the connectivity also. The government, the minister has unveiled the strategic blueprint our ministry is following, where every MDA under the ministry as well as private sector are working together to bridge the connectivity gaps. We are also working with other partners to bridge the literacy gap, because if you just connect people without the literacy, without the digital fluency, they won't be able to use it meaningfully.
All right. Thank you, DG. Now, cybersecurity and fraud concerns discourage many from adopting, digital banking. So what measures are in place to protect users and strengthen security in the digital space?
Okay, so we have the Cybersecurity Act, which we have the sectorial, we also have the NCCC, which is coordinated by the Office of the National Security Advisor. We are working on having the National Cybersecurity Architecture also, where we can have minimum cybersecurity investment each organization should have. So that will help in creating the visibility within cyberspace and also increasing our cyber resilience. So in addition to that also, according to research, more than 95% of cyber breaches are as a result of human factors, either from the user side or from the operator side. From the user side, if you look at most of the fraud happening online, it's either someone will call you claiming he's calling from your bank, or they use social engineering basically, like they are to show they are trying to help you to get your information and use that information against you. So that's why we are intentional on the digital literacy. Under it, we have a competency on safety. How can we enlighten our people to know the do and the don'ts online, to know how to protect your personal information? Because if you protect it, it will be difficult for anybody to break into your account or to hack your even WhatsApp. It is very rampant today. People will go into your WhatsApp group, get people's number, start sending messages like a friend is in a dire need of something, he needs something urgently, he needs your support and so on. So our people need to understand all these tricks the fraudsters are using. So that's why we are very intentional in that. And as part of our cybersecurity activity also, we do roadshow. We meet people in their places to try and enlighten them on the cyber hygiene. Because when you have a good cyber hygiene, when you know what to do and what not to do in line, it will be very difficult for someone to hack your account. So this will help to improve our cyber posture as a country as well.
Okay, thank you very much, DJ. Okay, let's go back to Dr. Abubakar Zaura now. We are talking about this financial inclusion. What specific initiatives, do you have in place, especially for women and youth entrepreneurship? When it comes to how they can take advantage of these initiatives.
You see, thank you so much, Mr. Ademola. Hold on. So the financial inclusion journey, in Nigeria has been on for a very long time, particularly 2012 when the initial National Financial Inclusion Strategy, was launched, was issued in the Central Bank of Nigeria. At that time, the exclusion rate was quite high. I think about 46% of Nigerians at that time does not have access to formal financial services. Okay, so that time a target was set, and that target was to achieve 80% inclusion by the year 2020 at that time, meaning the flip side of it is that to have at least, or not more than 20% exclusion. Exclusion-wise, the lesser, the better, right? So when the journey, started, at that time, it was so primitive, in terms of in flexibility, even within the financial services. So because of that deliberate and intentional policy decision of the country, so a lot of initiatives were instituted, and as of today, a lot of changes has happened. Let me give example. Unlike before, where if you get to your bank, you have to have this document, that document, identity, what do you call it, and all sort of documentation needed for you to open an account, and of course with the minimum deposit and all that. So because of that policy document, a lot of things were changed. I think they introduced one of the beautiful aspects of them is a issue of tiered KYC, right? The KYC, which is the know your customer, right? So that policy was instituted in order to reduce the complexity while being mindful of the risk management aspect of it as well. So 3 levels at that time, a policy was issued whereby at the entry level, tier 1, you can just walk into the bank and just maybe with any form of maybe with yourself without really much identity, you can access tier 1 KYC level. Certain amount was pegged in order to ensure that as you are into the system, you can do some transaction at the basic level. But then again, for you to achieve full-fledged high level, high amount, within your account, there's a need for you to bring those documentations that were, that were, can I say, waived, at the entry level. So then the second level, you need to have a means of identity, not necessarily any form of identity card, for example, to achieve tier 2. Do you understand? There was also a peg of somewhere around 500,000 or so. Then again, for you to have a full-fledged KYC, there's a need for you to have utility and all that. So this one was an intentional initiative introduced by the Central Bank of Nigeria in order to achieve this. The same thing also, a lot of people at that time, they don't come into the formal financial services simply because they do believe that banking is driven by interest, which in Hausa language you call it riba, or Arabic language haram, right? Is not so because of that, the central bank also came up with the initiatives of non-interest banking, whereby a lot of people now, in addition to having confidence in the system, also now realize that the banking is now for us because our religion now allow this thing to happen. So a lot of people also came into the formal financial system as a result of that, initiatives. Women were also put into consideration, whereby some interventions, especially during the last administration, central bank did some sort of interventions. One of such I can give example is MSMEDF, Micro, Small and Enterprise Development Fund. There was a certain amount, I think, that was pegged, purposely targeting women, right, in order to encourage women entrepreneurs for them to come into the formal financial services. I think there's also people with disabilities, certain amount was pegged for that. So not only in central bank, other ministries, departments and agencies came up with different specific and intentional initiatives in order. Then also financial literacy was also instituted. The framework as a national level was also introduced, and at the same time consumer protection. So all these ones were specific policies that were launched in order to encourage people to come into the formal financial space. As at the last count, December 2023, the report, this agency, EFINA, Enhancing Financial Innovation and Access, which has been rebranded just last week to Enhancing Financial Inclusion and Advancement, they came up, their own report showed that as of December, 74% of Nigerians were financially included. Right, 74%. Yes, included, as against the exclusion rate of 26%. You can see the journey started with 46%, right? Now 26%. I told you exclusion, the lower the better.
Get their figure from?
They do survey. They get to people. They have all sort of, they have a standard way which they work in collaboration with the NBS, National Bureau of Statistics, and of course other agencies. They go across the country. There is a standard way of doing things which has been globally recognized. All the development partners also. So the figure they come up with, 74%, 74% included, 26% excluded. Within this 74%, 64% they are banked, while 10% are informally served. Other initiatives, other ways of accessing, financial services. But the target is for people to operate within the regulated entities. The beautiful aspect of it is that there are agencies who are charged with the responsibility of regulating, those agencies, so that you can easily wade in if there's any issue. They can be able to track what exactly is the issue. But when this administration came on board, what we did something different was that economic inclusion is very, very important because it's an enabler to financial inclusion. All the nuances of, open an account, have access to financial services at lower cost and all of that. But again, if you open an account, if that account is not active, is not being used, I think the whole aim is defeated, right? So that is why this administration now combine this economic and financial inclusion all together, right? So the first activity we did was signing of the ASWA Accord on economic and financial inclusion. What is the whole ASWA Accord also about? I think they are basically built on 3 pillars. Number one of such is to recognize that this administration recognizes the importance of economic and financial inclusion, which has been clearly embedded in the blueprint of Mr. President, Renewed Hope Agenda, right? We have access to capital as part of the pillars. We have inclusivity, targeting, specialized groups or whatever. Inclusivity is one of such, in addition to all these other parameters, job creations, food security and all that. So recognition of the fact that economic and financial inclusion is very, very pivotal in this administration journey towards $1 trillion economy is one. Secondly, also is the commitment of this administration to support the implementations of policies and programs, that will enhance economic and financial inclusion, economic advancement, economic opportunities and whatnot, right? Then the last one is to promote what? Public-private partnership. That's why I was excited when DG was speaking. I was talking about, leveraging technology and all that. So we encourage, we encourage and we promote, interagency within the public space, then, and also within the private sector, as well as the coming together public and private sector, to support, the economic and financial inclusion. That's why symbolically, on 25th of April, the representative of different segments of the Nigerian economy came together and signed an ASWA Accord on economic and financial inclusion. So I think that is the combination of this economic and financial inclusion. So now with the inauguration of this committee that happened just some weeks ago, we're also rolling out some high-level policies that combine both the financial side and the fiscal side in order to come together to support Nigerian last mile. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zauru. Now, I'm just wondering, I was surprised a bit when you said 74% of Nigerians are financially included. Yeah. And the reason I ask DG is this. Despite innovations, you would agree with me that many rural areas still struggle with internet access and, of course, unreliable power supply. So if you have these issues, how do we ensure that technology-driven, and which is the case in most cases, technology-driven financial services reach those who need them the most? Because most people don't live in the city center. Take Abuja, for instance. How many people live in the city center? A large chunk live on the outskirts of Abuja. So how do we reach them if they don't have power supply, if they don't have internet services?
So, Mr. Victor, innovation is about taking idea from inception to impact or democratizing access to technology. Before you open an account, you have to walk into a bank, do a lot of things before you open an account. But now we have digital banks where you don't need to walk to any bank, where you don't need to capture any data, like Dr. Zoro talked about the tier of KYC we have. You can use your mobile phone to open an account today.
Which requires internet access and power supply.
Yes, but still, when you go to those rural communities, they use mobile phones. They have a charging point where people used to go to charge their mobile phones. Some they have spots where they used to go and connect to the network. because we have very wide coverage when it comes to telecommunication in Nigeria. Yes, we are not there, but people are managing what we have. And what we want to achieve with this ASO Accord is how can we encourage the private sector to be more innovative, to democratize access to all this, like even the energy, the electricity you are talking about. We have a new law today whereby you can generate energy using renewable sources. We have people going to even the businesses, banks, universities, to generate and sell energy to them directly. So everything is changing globally. And Nigeria also is already on that track on decentralizing the energy generation. So today you can have a license to generate energy in your village to sell to the people without them connecting to the grid. So people are using solar to charge their mobile, and even the telcos, they are using solar now to charge some of the cell towers. So I think what we are trying to achieve is to bring the private sector, the government, work together to see how we can democratize access to people to this technology.
Now, besides that, what would you say are the biggest challenges facing this policy?
For me, I think the biggest challenge is getting the people, the public-private sector to work together. Because there are things government can do, the private sector cannot do, and there are things private sector can do, government cannot do. But together we can do greater things, and nothing is impossible. If you look at our telecommunication, is owned by the private sector 100%. But they invest where they can break even, where they can make profit. Government is there to support, to connect people in the unconnected or underserved communities. That's why the government set up the USPF, the Universal Service Fund, and the Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, Dr. Bosun Tijani, has passion about this. He's working with them to ensure all the black spots are being connected within the country. And he's also working with the telcos and other development agencies to extend our fiber connectivities. That's why he seek for Mr. President approval for setting an SPV to roll 95,000 kilometers of fiber optics across the country.
Thank you very much, DG. Dr. Zauru, now the central bank, of course, which you have mentioned in part earlier, has been driving several initiatives to bridge this financial inclusion gap. But how much progress can we say have been made so far? And where do we find challenges in all of this?
Anyway, thank you so much, Victor. I think when I started with the narrating of those initiatives, those ones because of time constraints and all of that, resting with only those ones in central bank. Other regulators also have been contributing their quota. Okay. If you look at the financial sector, regulatory environment, we have NDIC, we also have PENCOM, we also have SEC. All these agencies, they have different initiatives they are also, bringing to the table in order to support, financial inclusion, right? I can give example. What do you call it? In other clients, advanced economies, you realize that insurance is one of the biggest, sector, right? In those places. In fact, some places is even bigger than the banking sector. But in our own case, when the target was set for in 2012, the 40% target was set to be achieved, by 2020 for insurance, for example. So, but as at the last count, which was December 2023, it was realized that the insurance was just somewhere around 3.1%. That's quite unacceptable, target achievement. But then now the question here is that what exactly went wrong, right? There are certain, in addition to religious issues, some people feel they are too religious, that okay, if anything happens, it's God's calling or something like that. But then people need to be aware. That's why advocacy, literacy and all that is very, 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 very important for us to achieve the success in what we're doing. We do agree Nigeria is one of the most religious country, fantastic stuff. But then, again, within the same religions also, there are different provisions. If it is about conventional insurance is available, even within the non-interest component, we have all sorts. You can give examples of takaful and all that. So the NICOM as a regulator within this space, they are actually doing a lot in that space in order to encourage. That is why last year, 2024, what we did at the presidency level was that we collaborated with NICOM to bring all the stakeholders, public and private sector, to ask ourselves, we lock ourselves in the room and ask ourselves what exactly is wrong, what is the challenge, how can we make it better, leveraging on other economies, and we're able to come up with what exactly were the pain points, how can we do better. And I think as at last year, I think the insurance policy has actually been reviewed and updated. As I speak with you this year, a lot we are partnering with also PENCOM. You see, the leadership of PENCOM, they are very fantastic, they are pro people, and I have to give kudos to Mr. President for that selection. Why is it so? Because he picked the people who were in the space, who knows the pain point. And that is why, last year, I told you when we came last week, that was that of advocacy, to do programs, to tell Nigerians what we're planning as well as planning. But this year is going to be initiatives, implementation, subnationals, and all that. Also, so within the insurance space, I think that one is coming up, and I'm sure within no distant time, you're going to see a lot of boost in that. Look at the Security and Exchange, SEC, like commission, right? They're also coming up with their own beautiful initiatives, within which that issue of restoration of confidence by every Nigerian, for Nigerians to know that, you can actually easily have access to buy your shares or transact within your shares, unlike you having it to even transfer it from one person to another is a difficult task. I think they have provided a lot of robust initiatives to come up. That's why this presidential committee, when I was listing out the list of members, somebody last week was talking about, okay, are they representing the last mile or something, maybe because of the large chunk, especially within the technical committee space under DG's leadership. You see, we had to look broadly to ensure that all those that have any role within this space are captured, and why the intentionality around setting up the economic and financial inclusion desk in the presidency, I think, is to leverage on the convening power of the presidency, because at that time, at that level, anybody that is invited and request him to do XYZ, he will have certainly no objection, because the issue of territorial ownership was something that does not apply. So, and we've been working on this judiciously and of course intentionally to ensure that whatever we do is in support of Mr. President's renewed hope agenda of this. So, and again, if you look at other clients, you would realize that Office of the Vice President play a very important role, especially at the presidency. Example of such is like India. I was in India about 3 months ago, to learn from their own success stories. In India, for example, you want to pay something like a peanut, in fact, let me say a beggar. You want to give him something,
I think I'll urge you to hold the Indian story until we return from this break. It's something I'd like to hear.
Thank you so much.
It will be after this break. Please don't go away. All right, thanks for being there. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. If you've just joined us, and we've been discussing, of course, financial inclusion, and we are looking at the programs associated with all of this, and we have two gentlemen in the studio with us who are shedding light. Just before we went on break, Dr. Zauro was trying to draw some lessons from India. So I promised we'll finish the Indian story.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Victor. So, well, the Indian story is not more than the intentionality of government, the leadership of that country to put it in place, enhance policies to accommodate some of those flaws, right? The challenges to address them in particular. So I think drawing from that, Nigeria, has been able to intentionally and deliberately create the structure at the apex level, right? And also put in place even the committee that will be able to, expeditiously address any challenge that has been, that comes their way. So I think the key aspect is to conduct sort of like a position audit. Where are we now? What are the issues? What are the challenges? And thank God, different, organizations that are handling this. I'll give example with FINA and, we have MBS and World Bank and many other independent organizations are bringing out the key aspect, the key challenges, the status, and then how can we actually make it better. So the decision to form this committee at the national level, I think, is critical. So it is now the responsibility of the committee to put in place the policies and programs that can be able to, achieve its mandate, its objective, drawing from the experiences of India and all that. And India, I think the major success stories is actually creating the middle class ecosystem, whereby we have so many middle class, micro, small, and medium enterprises. And when I was highlighting key gaps, within the financial inclusion, MSME is actually one of such, right? So the same thing within the office of the vice president. I'm sure we have the technical advisor, senior special assistant to president, on MSMEs and job creation, right? I'm sure not only long ago they've been doing a lot within the job creation, bringing support for micro, small, and medium enterprises. They've been creating all sort of SMEs clinics, right, within different states. I'm sure you have seen a lot happening within the country. So if I should go into, the details, I think the advisor, I think he speaks more better. But many other agencies, currently we have Student Loans Fund in order to support. Then we have a credit corporation, we have Bank of Industry, SMEDAM, Central Bank, and all sort of agencies. They are doing, their own bit in order to support the MSMEs, right? So for us, I can say, leveraging on all that, the key issue is the intentionality of government to come up with this in order to put all the stakeholders together to see how they can collectively address any issue that comes around, head on. I think that is very critical. Another one again is that the private sector aspect is also being promoted. We are currently, promoting that partnership. I can give example. Within the fintech space, for example, we have fintech NGR, and many other fintech associations and initiatives. They are doing a lot, within the private sector. We as government, we are collaborating with them to see how we can canvass for support. And within the same day that this committee was inaugurated, that same day also federal government have signed a kind of like MOU, right? The MOU, investment commitment by who? By the private sector. What does that mean? The need for infrastructure, which is very necessary, for us to be able to leverage technology and deliver this mandate of economic and financial inclusion. Government, we don't have to wait for government cycle of budget to go and do this. We are now saying, private sector, come, let's provide the enabling environment, because government has no business in doing business. We provide enabling environment for private sector to invest and, of course, make money, definitely, for sustainability. So we were able to secure that, and they had to invest in all the needed infrastructure so that, my friend, the DG, the technology, and other MSME guys can be able to ride on that to deliver on this mandate. I'm sure within this space, DG can also give us additional insights, right? But for the government, I think they have done their own bit, and they will continuously to ensure that this promise of this administration by Mr. President, which we call Renewed Hope Agenda, is delivered.
Okay,
Good morning.
The DJ, you want to give us more insight to that, and besides that, the issue of implementation now, because that is where the major challenge comes from when it comes to, we have beautiful policies, but the implementation is always the challenge. Especially when you go to the bank now, for instance, the issue of collateral is played down. But when you go to the bank now to want to access funds, you bring up this issue of collateral and all that. So how are you going to tackle the issue of implementation?
So I think for me, when you compare the Indian and Nigerian story side by side, the Indian story is not more excited than our own story. When you talk about this financial inclusion or digital public infrastructure, it's about 3 or 4 things, which is the payment system, digital identity, and data exchange platform. In the area of the payment system, Nigeria, we have a robust and advanced payment system, which I can proudly say is even more advanced than many developed nations. When we started T+1 in Nigeria, in many developed countries, you can't do T+1 to transfer money. When we started instant interbank transfer, many developed countries, even today, they don't reach that level, even including the US and UK. We were ahead in terms of that payment infrastructure. Then the digital identity. Dr. Zoro also mentioned about that. Our financial inclusion today is 74%. That means we also, in terms of digital identity, we are there, because for you to have a bank, you need to either have a NIN, BVN, or a mobile phone number. All our mobile phone numbers are linked to NIN. All our BVN are linked to NIN. So that means we've reached that level of digital ID. What we are lacking is the data exchange platform. And even India, they don't have that yet. They are building the data exchange platform, which we are also doing in Nigeria. We are doing the sectorial one. For example, in the financial sector, we are implementing the ISO standard of the data exchange, which will provide that data exchange platform to enable seamless integration between all the financial sectors. So if you put all this together and write our story, I think we have a fantastic story. One thing with us also, we don't tell our story. So that means we need to be more intentional about rebranding and marketing Nigeria. Then in terms of the political will, I think today we have it, because Mr. President is the chief marketing officer of the Nigeria. He always wants to sell Nigeria, want to promote Nigeria, and he's intentional even in his agenda. He wants to reform the economy to deliver sustained economic growth, sustained and inclusive. And you can only achieve this when you put or you bring the public and private sector to work together to implement. And that's what the ASO Accord is doing, bringing everybody together. What kind of policies do you need for government to put in place for you as a private sector to thrive to your full potential? So the government is ready. Part of the initiatives under ASO Accord is policy and legal reforms. We want the private sector to tell us what kind of laws, what kind of legal frameworks do they need the government to put in place for them to succeed. So if you look at this, this is just beyond putting policy together, because sometimes the challenge is the policy makers design and develop the policies without involving the people that will implement the policy. So there are gaps. But now we are talking about co-creating and co-developing the policies together. Okay. So as we do also, we can perfect it. Because you can come up, there is this say that no strategy lasts its first contact with reality. No matter how good you are in strategizing things, when you do the design, the paperwork, when you come to the implementation, you have to tweak some things. So if we work together, it will make it easier for us. The private sector, they are in the market, they know what they want, and they understand the terrain better than government. Government is to provide the enabling policies. Okay. So we want them to tell us what kind of policies do they need. And we have all the regulators in the committee, and also the presidency is leading everything. So like Dr. Zoro said, the presidency has the convening power, and the private sector has a seat on the table. So they will tell us what they want, we'll implement immediately. So I believe with this kind of architecture, we should not worry about challenge when it comes to implementation.
But there's one thing to worry about, and that is the trust issue. Now, yes, fintech innovations are all over the place. It seems like they are growing, they are spreading, but Nigerians have trust issues when it comes to, digital financial services and all of that. People still get defrauded, they still lose their money. They hack into their accounts and take their money and nothing comes out of it. Someone could defraud you and somebody gets money from you in a way when you don't intend to send money to them, and then you go to the bank to try and recoup, to retrieve your money. You get all sorts of obstacles. You have to get bank this, get caught this, and get caught that. All of these make it difficult for a lot of people to trust digital financial services. How are you going to deal with the trust issues?
Okay, so if you said that, it's two things. We have digitally native population, and we have the digital laddites. So for the digital native, for example, if you look at who are the customers of all these digital banks, like OPay, MoneyPoint, and so on, maybe you and I, we don't have account with them. But if you look at the young people, the Gen Z, they don't go to these big conventional banks because they are looking for convenience. They can conveniently use their digital devices to open account and access services. And also, some of them, they understand the attitude. You cannot easily trick them on the digital space when it comes to social engineering. Most of the victims of that fraud are people who are not digital native. So that demographic, and Nigeria also, our population, more than 60% are Gen Z. So,
but nobody should be a victim.
So, but if you look at who are the victims, are they the Gen Z or the senior citizens? Mostly it's not the Gen Z. The Gen Z, they are comfortable with digital banking, they use it, they don't go to the conventional banks. That's why today most of these digital banks, they have even more customers, they do more transactions than the big banks. So, but what can we do as a government to address this challenge? Like I said earlier, more than 95% of cyber breaches are as a result of human errors. So that means we need to do more of education, more of campaigns about the digital hygiene. How can we get our people to understand the do and the don't online? So I spoke about the National Digital Literacy Framework, where we want to achieve 95% digital literacy level. And I spoke about the competency areas. One of them is safety. How can we enlighten our people? How can we educate them to be more literate when it comes to safety, to know the rules and the regulations, and to use these digital services safely? So if you have that knowledge, it will be very difficult for anybody to defraud you online, because we have the security. There is no way someone will access your bank without getting information from you or from someone internally from the banks. And the banks also, they are doing a lot. CBN has the IT standard, which cybersecurity is one of them. CBN does a cyber audit on the banks to check if they comply with all the standards. And even if you look at mostly, it is in a rare situation you have the insider this thing when it comes to financial fraud. Mostly it's about social engineering. People call you, try to get your card details, or at the ATM machine there are situations where people, they will go and try to ask someone to help them. They use that to, So, but with more education, I believe we can address that. It is not only a challenge in Nigeria, it is a global challenge.
It's a global
That's
phenomenon.
why you can even see all this Yahoo. They are even, the victims are from the developed countries, educated people, but because they use social engineering against them.
Okay, thank you very much, DG. As we begin to wind up, Dr. Zauro, what are the what do you think is the way forward for further promoting this economic and financial inclusion?
Thank you so much, my brother. So the way forward, I think this administration is quite smart enough, and is quite intentional by deliberately putting this structure at the apex level in order to get the needed support. And before now, the implementation of economic and financial inclusion, has been at the sectoral and at its institutional level. But this time around, elevating the conversation around economic and financial inclusion to the National Economic Council, I think, is the smart move. That's what I mean by smartness. The National Economic Council, is a council where key ministries and the entire subnationals are members. Unlike before, where at the federal level certain policies and all that are taking place, this time around we are targeting subnationals. That is why all the governors are going to be in the room where deliberations and decisions are taken in support of economic and financial inclusion. Let me give you an example. On this economy, I think the first governor that issued an executive order in his state on this financial inclusion is Kaduna State. So because of that, that is the Governor Obasani. So when that decision was taken, at the inception of this administration, the last survey that was conducted, it was realized that within the short period of time, there was a scale in terms of the number of the people that came into the formal financial services. They set up what we call Kadrima, right? That has to do with identity within the states. Okay. So then again, look at Enugu State, for example. During the inaugural speech, the Enugu State governor did talk about, the increase of IGR from 30 billion, right? Is it 30 billion, 30 billion to somewhere around more than 500 million, more than 1,000 increment. So again, many states are actually coming up with this. Look at Lagos, driven by a private sector and all that. Subnationals is the key to go. Thank you.
Abubakar, sorry, we have to just cut you short.
I understand.
Because of our time. We want to thank you, Dr. Nuruddin Abubakar Zauro, the technical advisor to the President on Economic and Financial Inclusion, also the Secretary and the head of the Presidential Committee on Economic and Financial Inclusion.
Secretariat.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right. I want to thank Dr. Abdullahi Alhaji Kashifu Inuwa Abdullahi, Director General, National Information and Technology Development Agency, NITDA, and Chairman of the Technical Committee of PRISIFI. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Yeah. So that's our discussion this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. It's good having you there. My name is Ademola Adeoye.
And I am Victor Azu. Wish you a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.